Hi, my name is William Beam, and today we're going to take a look at new software from Trey Ratcliffe and MacFun. It's called Aurora HDR Pro, and it's a new application for tone mapping HDR images. Let's go ahead and launch it up. And while that's coming up, let me tell you a little about the system I'm running so you can use that for comparison based on what you're using. I've got a brand new iMac 5K with 24 gigs of RAM. And the images that I'm going to be using to process are from a Nikon D800. They're about 36 megapixels each. So let's start off with taking a look at some of the sample images. These are from Trey Ratcliffe, and he's given us a bracket of 3. This is your standard exposure, this is +2 EV, and this is your under 2. When you launch, you've got 3 checkbox options. Each one of these will add a little bit of time to the overall processing before you can begin. So you can alignment if you haven't shot on a tripod, ghost reduction if you need it, and chromatic aberration. For this case, I'm going to skip all of those, and we're just going to go ahead and create an HDR and see how long it takes for it to build. So ready? Go. And I'm not running a timer, but honestly, that's pretty fast, even for a new system. I've run different HDR programs before. I've never received a result that quickly. So we start off with a nice image here. One of the things I like about some of Trey's photos is he's got a good balance of color contrast. You've got your warm colors and your cool tones. This is be a fun image to process, and if you get a copy of Aurora HDR Pro, this photo is included with it, so you can play with this and have some fun. I'm going to go ahead and work with some of my own images for this first look. So let me close this down and do File, Open. I'm going to start off with this shot that I had from Las Vegas with a fisheye. So open that up. I was shot on a tripod, and I'm going to skip all of the alignment, ghost reduction, and chromatic aberration, and just go ahead and create the HDR. So it may run a little bit slower than the last one. I don't know what size photos Trey provided for there, but 36 megapixels, that's still a pretty good speed. Overall, I'm just really happy with that. And I'm looking through. You've got a nice beginning of kind of a natural look HDR to start with. One of the first things I wanted to do was start off with the user interface. So we're going to go with a little bit of a tour of that and build this photo up as we go. Some of the things I've tried with this program, I got an early release version to look at. Some of the ones I haven't tried, so there may be a little bit of fumbling around, but we'll kind of learn as we go. I want to show you on the user interface up at the top bar over here, we're going to run the icons from left to right. As we do, pay attention to this other darker gray bar underneath, because as you choose some of these items, you'll have other options that will show up down there. First one with the folder is, not surprisingly, it opens up your folder so you can go ahead and select the images that you want to. So I'm going to cancel that. The next one with the arrow is for exporting images or sharing. You've got applications everywhere from your mail app to messages and Twitter, Facebook, Flickr, and SmugMug. You can also open your images in a number of different applications. So the first ones that you see up here are from the MacFun Creative Kit, which is a wonderful set of tools in itself, but that's another discussion. This little lens right here is Aperture. This is Photoshop, Lightroom, and the new Photos app for Mac OS X. I see the old iPhoto app there. I don't have that loaded on this machine, and I don't really know what that one is, but we'll skip that. If you've got it, I'm sure it'll be lit up for you to use. If you're running the trial version, you may not be able to share some of these out or export them. That's kind of one of the limitations they do for the trial. Once you've got the full image, or excuse me, the full license for Aurora, then all of this will be available to you based on what you've got installed. Okay, let's go to the next section, which is basically taking care of zooming in and out and how much of the image you want to see. Click on 100% and it will give you your 100% crop view, which on a 5K screen doesn't really zoom you that far in. It probably used to seeing much more of a zoom in on my old machine. The next button over here will just take you back out to full fit. And one of the things you may have noticed changing is this zoom right here. So if we pull this down, you can go anywhere from 25% to 300%. So if we go in 300%, there you go. You can get in and work on some detail of your images. I'll take us back out to full screen. Moving along, the next section you're going to see is the eyeball. That is for your kind of quick preview before and after. So if I hold this down, it shows you the difference between where you started with your original and where you're at now. If you're wondering why we have a little bit of a change right now, I believe it's because by default you get a little bit of this HDR look. But this is kind of your flat image, or perhaps it's your zero exposure. I'm not really positive yet. The next one over is your typical split screen. So you've got a little slider, and to the left will be your before, and to the right will be your after. You can change that up and do a side-by-side comparison. And it's also a good time to point out the item or object that you have active is what appears orange. So if I come over here and click this and turn that off, it's gray. If I turn it on, it's orange. So if you ever see something orange up here, you'll know that that's what's active. If I'm holding down the eyeball, it's active. Let go, it's not. Next one over, the two arrows. Quite simply, undo and redo. So if you make a mistake, you want to go back and undo something, hit that. It'll give you a few little, depending on your buffer, I believe. I'm not sure how many undo sessions you've got, so try not to make too many mistakes and find out. On your next session, we have a pair of scissors. This is actually your crop tool. And again, underneath here, you can see that there's a bit of a change to the sub-menu. You can change the angle using this little slider right here. And as you do so, you notice that the grid inside of your crop window changes. And you can do the same thing if you move outside of the crop window and you get those little curved arrows. You can kind of adjust that as you want to manually instead of using the window. Speaking of the guides and how they change, you've got two options up here. You have your traditional rule of thirds, and you also have a golden ratio. And if you're seeing those guides, and you don't know why, it's because somehow or another you've got something selected where it thinks that you're moving it around. So, and as far as ratios, it starts off with a free ratio, so you can move things as you please without any requirement to be relating to the other windows. I tend to prefer using a 16:9 crop, and it keeps everything. If I move this in, it moves everything proportionally. You've got the other options for a square, 3x2 and 4x3, and of course you can always go back to your original. I'm going to cancel the crop. The hand you can see is selected by default. That's simply your move tool. So if we zoom in a little bit and we just move around, that's all we're looking at there with a hand tool. The brush tool. You can make your brush larger and smaller with your standard bracket keys, same as you would do in tools like Photoshop. You can pull down this little menu. You can change the size, the opacity, the softness. You've got a couple of quick brushes. And if you've got a tablet with pen pressure, you can choose whether you want to have that pressure affect the radius of the brush or the opacity. I kind of like my opacity a little bit higher, probably around 80. And next to that, you're going to have an eraser tool. And then we finally kind of clicked into our gradient tool. So all of that is happening under the brush. So there's your gradient, there's your eraser, and your brush. Over here, you can see your mask. And you can clear your mask. And you've got a little bit of a pull down window in case you want to invert, fill, or you've got an option here for creating a luminosity mask. I'm not going to go over that in detail here, particularly with this image, but that's going to give you some nice creative options with making, instead of rather doing tone mapping to create your HDR, using masking to show the parts of the image that you want. Another handy thing was copy and paste mask. So if you've got a mask that you like here and you want to go and create another layer and then change something with a different tool, but use the same mask, it's nice to be able to copy it and just paste it on the other layer. Speaking of layers, that is what this button is. This little orange one right here, it shows your layers palette, and the one next to it shows your histogram, whether it's going to be on or not. Histogram has the traditional little triangles up there, so if I click this one, it'll show, you can see right here at this street light, there's a little bit of red underneath. I'm going to click that again and turn it off. It'll just show you where you're clipping in your image. And I'm not going to worry that my lights are clipping. There's another one over here in this building for Prada. And I'm going to turn the histogram off and get that out of our way. Working with layers, you've got quick and easy access, but to create or delete layers, but let's start off with your original image. This one is your tone mapped image that was created when you launched and merged your images. It does not move. You cannot move it up and down the stack. You cannot delete it. It is going to be there. It does have a mask with it. This little square right here is going to be your mask. But other than that, it will always be your base image, and you'll have to work from there. This menu right here will show you some of the options that you've got. So since you can't change too much about the original layer, you can basically show, invert, and clear the mask, same as what we were looking at the other side. But let's say that we go ahead and duplicate that layer. I'm going to turn off the mask. Now on the menu, you've got a couple of other things. So for that layer, you can change your blend mode. Maybe you want that to be soft light, which creates a interesting little effect. You can also change the opacity for it. So let's say it's soft light at roughly 50%. You can change the source image. So custom texture would give you an option to load basically an image file. It could be a photograph. It could be anything, a picture of wood, picture of gravel, or whatever kind of texture you want that you can overlay on your photo and kind of give it a painterly look. I'm going to skip that over since I don't have any textures right now to use. And then down to the source image, you can also see that you've got an option to load your original frame. So the 0 is your default. Excuse me, I'm sorry. That's the number that they loaded. But in this case over here, you can see the exposure value. So that's my -2 value. This is my standard exposure, and this is my +2. So if I change this over to my +2 image, there's a little bit of change there, but keep in mind we've got make that normal. So you can see there's a big change if I show just that image on top. And then this little orange dot right here is, do you want to see the layer or not? So right now I've got my layer for my +2 image, and then you could mask things in or out if you want to, if that's part of the HDR technique that you like. For example, sometimes if you've got a shorter duration of shutter speed and you've got a sharp image of something here that might be ghosted in the tone map, you can kind of mask in the sharp one you want and wipe out the rest. But I don't really need that for this image, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the layer. Using layers also gives you the opportunity with those masks to do your isolated edit. So for everything that we've got over here under the tools section that we're looking at is global. It affects everything on the layer that you're working at unless you mask it out. Since you've got limited ability to do that with your base layer, I would suggest that you'd use your base layer for all of your global changes that you want to make, then add layers and do your adjustment brush type changes, something that you want to do for specific areas, local adjustments rather than global adjustments. Okay, speaking of adjustments, let's take a look. You've got raw tone mapping here. If you see this little arrow pointing down, if you click that, you've got an option to pull those things down and change. The circular arrows is your reset button. You can turn that on or off. And if you've made changes, these little orange lights are the same as what we saw on the arrows. Let's say that I turn clarity all the way up. You can see how that made a drastic change to everything in the image. We can hit this little orange button, and you can turn off just the adjustment that you're making right there. So it doesn't affect the others, but everything in this section is turning off. And if you want to turn off something or reset it back to default, just double-click the word. So if I double-click clarity, it goes right back to 0. So Smart Tone, if I pull this up to about 42, you can see how it brightens everything up. You can also start to see there's some clouds in the sky, a little bit of a dust spot up there, but it's also adding a bit of noise. Pull the Smart Tone down a bit, and you're getting the opposite effect. You're darkening things up. So I'm not going to tell you if there's any right or wrong. I'd say go for your own taste. I'm going to hold this about 20, and I'm going to just start making some adjustments here. So I'm going to pull my highlights up. I'm going to pull my shadows down and bounce the midtones a little bit. I'm going to go pop my whites, pull back the blacks, and add a little bit of contrast. More than a little bit, 39. And now we've got a bit of a different image. So let's go back up to the eye and see that's where we started, and that's where we are now. And why not? Let's add a little bit of clarity just to see what that does. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to take that one back later on and make that more of a local adjustment. So I'm going to turn the clarity off. HDR look. This is, let's just demonstrate it. Let's go ahead and take this all the way up to 100. That is your Elvis on Velvet. You can soften that out a little bit, or you can double down and just make it extraordinarily garish. Boost does what you would think it would do. It just amplifies what you've already got. So now that is probably one of the most horrible looking HDRs that I think I can ever remember making. So I'm going to turn all this back down and take this back to 20. I'm going to remove the softness, remove the boost, and I'm happy with what I've got right there. Denoise. You saw that I had some noise in the sky. It doesn't appear so bad right now. I'm actually going to skip this for right now. It seems to work very well, but sometimes there are ways that you can deal with noise without having to work with the denoise tool. And again, I'm careful about running denoise on as a global adjustment. If I don't have noise in the sky, I'm going to want to use that on a layer and then mask it in only where I need it, just so I don't soften other parts that I'm trying to make a little bit stronger or grittier or sharper. All right, let's come down here to image radiance. This, along with further down, you'll see glow. Those two kind of work in concert with each other. You don't have to use both of them. You don't have to use either of them if you don't want to. But I tend to prefer image radiance, and I'm going to over-exaggerate this for effect. You can see what it is. It's immediately softened everything. It looks kind of like what you would get if you would make a Gaussian blur in Photoshop and then put it on soft light. I don't really want to use too much of it. I think about 25 is usually about as much as I go. But let me click the little button here, and you can kind of see what changes made before and after. So that's without the image radiance, and that's with. You can smooth this out, or you can pull that back and let a little harshness come through. I kind of like to pull it back and then turn up the brightness a bit. The next part, we've got Smart Colorize. So if you pull Colorize all the way back, not too much, push it up a little bit, you're going to get punchier colors, and it's going to make, it's not quite like saturation. We've got that further down here. It's looking at your color contrast, and it's just making wiser decisions about which colors to bump up. Again, with your warmth, your blue is going to be your cooler tones, your red will be warmer. For a scene like this with these little yellow lights, I want it to be just a little bit warmer, and about 15 is good. Color. So let's go back and look here. You should be familiar probably with a lot of these things. Saturation, if you want to work with a black and white HDR, pull it all the way down. There you go. I'm going to double click that, and honestly, I never really like to use saturation because I can get color using some of the other tools without having to pump up saturation. If I pump that all the way up, you can see it's just completely unrealistic. So I would rather amplify the vibrance a little bit. 20 or so is good. And sometimes, particularly if I've got warm and cool colors, like in this case, I've got the blue buildings and I've got the warm colors here, and also with the Veer towers, yellow. I kind of want to pump up the color contrast a little bit. Again, I don't want to do too much. That's just, my taste and my preference. So if we hit this and turn it off, the color shifts and changes are kind of subtle, which is, for my taste, that's what I want. If you want to amp them up or pull them all the way back, go for it. Details give you a little bit of kind of what your clarity was doing, but with a bit more control. And I like the fact that you can do it with highlights and shadows. So I mentioned that there are other ways with dealing with noise. One of the things I kind of like to do is come over to the highlights and pull back on small details. And then I'll go back over to global, and I might punch up my mid and maybe even my large details a little bit. And your masking, I was assuming that this was working kind of like it does in Lightroom. So in other words, if your mask is all the way off, that everything that you touch with the details is going to be sharpened a bit. And as you move it over here more and more so to the right, that only the larger items would get that masking. One of the things you do in Lightroom is you can hold down the Option key, and as you drag it, you can see what the mask looks like. I don't see that availability here, so quite honestly, I don't know what the masking is doing for me. So therefore, in my case, I'm just simply not even using it. When in doubt, read the directions. The nice thing about this is there is a good set of instructions that comes with it, and which I've chosen to ignore. But that's all right. Glow. We're going to move on to this one. This is not quite what I'm used to seeing as glow in some of the other tools. It's image radiance is more like what I would used to see as glow in some other software programs. This one, I think, is much better for lighting. And let me take it way up. And you can see how around the light there's almost like a white haze that comes up. We'll pull that back to about 29. Glow is one that I think that you probably would do better to do as an adjustment, a local adjustment, rather than for the whole image. So I'm going to pull my glow back all the way, and we're going to skip down to top and bottom lighting. Put simply, this is a gradient. So if I want more light up top, I can go higher like that. And bottom, if I want more light, I can put it there, or if I want to darken it up, I can pull it back. The blend, as soon as you click on that, you can see where your tool is, and that's what is affecting your gradient. Beneath it, shift and rotation basically allows you to choose, do you want this to be a vertical or horizontal or even a diagonal gradient. So click shift, it moves it up and down, and rotation gives us the options to change that way. So let me double click those and reset those back to where they were. All right, tone curve. Pretty common. I'm not going to go through a lot of the details on this. If you worked with curves before, they work the same way. You can do the whole stack, or you can do just your channels for red, green, and blue. What I want to get down to next are these two sections where it says color filter and color toning. And that gives you some nice options for basically color grading your image. For the color filter, I prefer, for my case, I like to work with luminance rather than the saturation. And let's say if I want to make some colors pop a bit more, for example, the blues on luminance, I'm going to push that up. And you can see how immediately they kind of brightened over here. So if it wasn't clear, let me pull it back and push it up so you can just see how they just jump out again. Same thing with the yellows. I can pull the yellows back, or I can pump them up, and you can just really make some of these things pop. Again, this is another thing that you could either do globally, or if you want to on an adjustment layer. You've got a lot of yellows here. You may want them to have different levels of luminance. So it could be make a layer and work on, for example, this section of the VR towers, make that one level, and then maybe make the street lights down here another level of luminance. The color toning, I kind of think of this as these are presets for color grading. This one in the center here, let's just click that. And what it's really doing is you can see beneath here, it's changing the tint and shading that you're doing for your highlights and shadows. So I'm going to walk right through these different presets, starting from the left going to the right, and just so you can see what the impact is. Some you may like, some you may not. Actually, I don't mind that one so much. And some of them are really going to work better for different images. So, for example, this image is kind of got the yellow and blue vibe going on already. So the purple and green, or magenta and green, is not really going to work very well for it, I don't believe. But in my case, I'm going to reset it and turn those off. I'm not going to work with any color toning on this particular image. But I think it's a nice little tool to have. And it's good if you want to go in for some color grading and do some playing around with this and just see what you get. And if you want to protect your tones, so for example, let's say that we chose yellow here, and let's pull the protection back to 50%. We're going to really amp it up. Now, as we move the protection, you can see how it's kind of changing. Turn the protection off, your yellow is saturated a little way. Turn it up to 100%, and it's blocked it down kind of as much as it can. But again, I'm going to just reset this and not mess with any of that. Vignette. This works as you would expect it to, and it's a handy little feature. If you push it over to the right, you're going to get the kind of white frosty vignette until you basically have white vignette, which I have just never needed or wanted. I prefer moving things a little darker on the edges. you can change the size. One of the things I like to do to get the right size is I'll pull the vignette over, at 100%, and then I'll start playing around with the size to see how much of the vignette do I want. Where am I really trying to draw the eye? And if you look down at the bottom section, you've got place center. So let's say that we want people's eye drawn right here to where it's this building that says Prado, and it shifts things down. So now that I know where I've got the vignette, I've got the size that I want, I can start pulling back on this. And let's just turn this off. Back on. There's a subtle change there. So for this image, I might need a bit more of an amount if I want to draw somebody down there. There, now you can kind of tell the difference. And also, if you got the amount at 100%, it's easy to find out, how much roundness you've added to it. You may want a really small area to it. Let's really turn it down. And then let's change the feather. It's going to be a harsh vignette, or is it going to be pretty smooth? And just like that, it's a subtle tool. But one of the things that really helps you is when you come down here to inner light, and you just brighten the spot that you're looking at. So, again, and just to really show that off, I'm going to pull this all the way up. So you can see how the center is just kind of glowing with nuclear radiation. I'm going to pull that back down about between 20 and 25 usually. And as I mentioned, I've got my center place right over there. That is pretty much it for going through the palette we've got over here. However, we have presets. And rather than going on this image, I'm going to click this, put that back down, give it a chance to catch up again so I can see the image that I just created. So if I want to save that, I can click over here. I can say export to image, and then I can just give it, let's see, final. Call that one the final fisheye. You've got your choices, what color space you want to use, what formats you want to put it into, and how much quality. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that in the folder where I got it. A little bit of processing, and hopefully we'll be done pretty soon. I didn't go back and crop this one. That's a shame on me. We'll do some cropping on the next image. Okay, so I'm done with this. Let's see what happens if I don't close that. Let's just go ahead and go up to my demo folder. We're going to go into Morocco. And if I screw everything up here, you'll be able to see it. Would you like to save changes? No, I've already done that. So, all right, so here's my images. This is, hate to disappoint you, this is not really Morocco. This is the Moroccan Pavilion out at Epcot. I live in Orlando, so it's close by. And again, I've done the same thing. I've got my standard exposure, +2 and a -2. And also, I'm going to skip the alignment, ghost, and reduction. There's no ghost here. There's nobody in there. I was shooting on a tripod, so I'm not worried. So we'll just go ahead and create HDR. Once again, it seems to be zipping through it rather quickly. And there you go. We've got our basic image. All right. Here's kind of what I want to do. I want to brighten these columns that are standing here. I kind of want to darken the background a little bit, yet I want this center to stand out a bit more. And also, I don't need this column on the far left side. I'm probably going to crop that in a bit. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to start off with Smart Tone, again, about 20, 25. Pull up my highlights and midtones. I'm going to pull down some shadows. What I think is really going to help me here is pushing in some whites and pulling out the blacks. All right, that's getting me a bit more bright. And my contrast. Let's pump that up. I'm going to jump in some clarity on here. I don't really want HDR look on this, but I do want to get some detail. And you can see on the tile how that kind of really makes it stand out and pop a bit more. Image radiance. I really do love this tool. When I'm pushing this up in here, you can see how it's toning down the wall in the background. And let's see what happens if I add a bit of brightness. I may regret that, but actually I don't. I'm going to add a bit of warmth, and I'm going to pump up the vibrance a bit and color contrast a bit. And I'm starting to get what I want. I'm starting to see this wall in the back go. Well, let's take a look. There's before, there's after. So I'm getting a bit brighter tone on the columns, and I'm getting a bit darker on there, so that's kind of making it stand out. It's not quite as flat. And it's a bit more alive, too. You can see a little bit more detail in the contrast, from the shadow over here. Whereas before, you barely noticed that it was there. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. I'm not going to play around with temperature and tint. I'm fine with what we have here. As far as the details, I'm going to take a look at the medium details and just bump that a little bit. I don't know if glow is going to help me or not, so I'm going to use a little bit. Actually, you know what? I like that. Give that a little bit of brightness on the glow. And pull back on the softness. And I do definitely want to use the top and bottom lighting, or basically the gradient, because you see up at the top here, I've got a lot of light that's showing up on there that I think is taken away from what I want. I want the center to be the place that pulls attention. So let's pull the top down a bit. I'm just guessing. There's no magic to the numbers here. And let's pull the bottom down a little bit too. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down to the bottom of the vignette, make a small vignette, and I'm going to put my center right there. I'm going to add some inner light. And let's make my vignette a little bit stronger, and also make the size a little bit smaller there. And I'm going to pump up the feather. So in a few short clicks, we've gone from there to here, and that kind of gives me what I'm looking for. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and start playing with my crop. In this case, I am going to go with freeform, because all I really want to do is pull this one in enough to get rid of that column, maybe just a smidge back. What I'm looking at is this little archway over here. I want it to match the one on the corresponding size. And I think I'm going to pull the top down a little bit, because I don't need whatever these little things are up here. I don't need them. And I'm going to keep the bottom where it is. So I'm actually happy with that. So let's hit the crop button. And notice while the crop is on, none of your effects or changes that you've made show up. It works with the basic image. And then once it's through the crop, you see that little orange line running back and forth while it's thinking. It'll go back and apply all the changes that you had made before. And there you go. That's my final image. That took me it took me more time to talk about it than it did to make it. Literally all I had to do was load this up, move a few sliders, and crop it, and done. I can't imagine doing that with any other tool. When I've worked with other HDR processing tools, just creating the tone mapping took a much longer time. And then I would have to take the tone map plus the exposures, JPEGs of my brackets, into Photoshop, and I'd have to mask out places where there were artifacts or other things that I didn't like, and get it down to a final image, which then I could finally start processing the way I'm doing with these tools over here. So, for example, I didn't have color filters. I didn't have a vignette in any of my HDR tools. I didn't have, standard processing tools like structure and image radiance and so forth. I'd have to go through either Lightroom's development module or Adobe Camera Raw or Aperture's development module on the basic image before I could even start playing with tools like, for example, Nik Software Suite or On1. Wonderful tools in themselves. I love them. I still use them. But nothing until now has given me everything in one package the way that this tool has. And it's not only doing it, it's doing it well, and it's doing it very fast. I can get my images processed much faster with Aurora HDR than I ever have been before in any of my HDR experience. If you like what you've seen here today, I would encourage you to go ahead and check it out. It is available to you at williambeam.com/MacFun. That will take you through my affiliate link over to the site where you can download this. You can get a free trial if you want to. Play with it for a while. That free trial will limit you as far as exporting your final results, but it lets you see the whole image. And it's not a time-limited one. You can keep on working with it, but usually, after a week or so, if you want it or not. If you do, that's great. I think this is the best HDR tool I've ever seen. It has a lot more features. It creates beautiful images. You can go from very natural looking to very heavy textured and I guess grungy HDR look is what the other tools have been created in the past. If that's your what the look that you like and that very heavily processed look, you can do it here, or you can make it look very natural and realistic. So I have no hesitation recommending it. With that in mind, I will leave you to go. Hope you've enjoyed this. Please leave me a comment either on my website at williambeam.com or on the YouTube channel below. And thank you very much.